Hello everyone, myself Dr. Megha, Assistant Professor, School of Legal Studies, K.R. Mangalam University. Today we will be discussing about the concept of trespass in law of torts. So when we discuss about trespass, it comes under criminal liability as well as in civil liability. Here in today's session we will be discussing it in the context of civil liability. So when we talk about the concept of trespass, it may be to land, it may be to person. So when we say that trespass to property, it may be to land, it may be to goods. So that means it may be in regard to movable property or immovable property. So here we will be discussing in the context of immovable property, that is trespass to land, and then we will be moving to trespass to person. So first we need to understand what is the meaning of trespass. It is a direct interference with another person or his property which infringes that person's right to enjoyment of his land, possession of his goods or freedom of his movement. So in this sense it may be interference with the enjoyment of the right of property as well as his fundamental or legal rights. Trespass is accountable per se. That means there is no need to prove injury. Plaintiff need not to show that defendant caused any damage or injury. If that person has entered into the land of somebody else or he has interfered in the right of enjoyment of somebody else, that would be actionable as it is. Trespass to land comprises any unjustifiable interference with the property which is in others' possession. So trespass, we understand that it is the interference with somebody's enjoyment of his rights. It may be in relation to property or it may be in relation to his rights, his person. So when we talk about trespass to land, it is specifically in the interference with property, that is in the possession of somebody else. Again, this tort is actionable per se, which requires no proof of actual damage. It can be committed either by person himself by entering the land of others without his permission, or it may be committed by throwing some material objects like throwing stones or allowing cattle to enter in others' land. So anyhow it should be the interference in the enjoyment of land, it should be interference in the possession by somebody else. So it may be by personally entering into the land of that person, or it may be by throwing some object into the land, or by allowing our cattle into somebody's other's land without that person's permission. So we can say that this is a wrong that is against the possession but not against the ownership. So when we say that this is a wrong against possession, this possession is classified into two categories, that is de facto possession and de jure possession. De facto possession is actual possession. That means A is living in a house, he is enjoying that house, he is paying the rent of that house, that means he is having the possession of that property, and this is called de facto possession. And if somebody, any XYZ person enters into that land without the permission of A, he will be liable for trespass. So that would also be considered as a trespass, although he is not the actual owner of that property. And on the contrary, there is the concept of de jure possession, that is named as constructive possession, which means that the actual person, the owner of that property, is not residing in that property, but he is having the righteous ownership on that property. Again, trespass can be committed against him. So there must be any kind of possession. It may be actual, that the person is living on that property, or it may be de jure, that even though that person is not living in that property, but still he is having ownership and he can deny the entrance of somebody else without his permission into his property. Now if plaintiff has to make defendant liable for trespass, he has to show some essentials for the commission of trespass, and the first one is possession of immovable property, because here we are talking about land. So, it is in the context of immovable property, which means having the control over use of immovable property. It may be actual or constructive, that we had already discussed ki, that the person actually may reside on that property, or he may be the owner of that property although he is not resident of that property. So, the main essence is that there must be possession. If that there is no possession, for example, if some encroacher is there, if some thief is there, if some thug is residing there, he is hiding himself in some place, and then he is claiming that somebody else enters into that property, and that is that person has committed trespass, so that won't be considered trespass. The question is why? Because that person is not the rightful owner of that property. He is not having the rightful possession of that property. So, this possession is first and the foremost essential of trespass. Then possession is not enough. If I am residing in my property and I am enjoying my property and nobody is entering into that territory, not entering into that premises, I cannot make somebody liable for trespass. So, what is the second essential for commission of this trespass? And that is disturbance to the possession by defendant. And this disturbance, that is the interference in the right of enjoyment, it may be committed by any of the following ways, like by entry. That means by entering into the land of somebody else without his or her permission, and it may be above the surface or beneath the surface. So, it is not necessary that his entry should be visible. If he is entering by making any entry beneath the land, that would also be called as a trespass, and that will be called as trespass ab initio, which means from the very beginning. So, from the very beginning he will be liable for the commission of trespass. So, this is the first way of commission of disturbance. Then it may be by inanimate object, which means throwing anything on land without entering into that land. Somebody is throwing stones or any garbage or any debris on the land of somebody else without that person's permission. This is also known as disturbance to the possession. Then by staying on the land. So, this says that the first and the initial entry was lawful, that it was with the permission of the plaintiff. But he was asked to go from that place, he was asked to leave that place, but despite of this fact that he was asked to leave that place, he was remaining on that property. This is also termed as a trespass. By staying on the land, he is creating disturbance in the possession. And the next one is by entry of cattle. It includes any and every animal except dogs and cats, because these are considered as pet animals and they may enter into the land of somebody else, even despite of this fact that we are taking proper care and caution. So, other than dogs and cats, if any other cattle which are being possessed by the defendant and they enter into the land of plaintiff, then it would also considered as disturbance and it may be considered as trespass. So, if defendant cattle entry on land, plaintiff has to prove two things. Now, the mere entry is not considered as disturbance. There must be two further essentials to prove this disturbance, that defendant was negligent on his part, that he was not taking care of these animals and he was like very reckless, and because of his negligence they entered into the land of plaintiff and further damages caused by cattle. If there is no damage, then no liability can be arose. So, this is only in the case of cattle. If person himself entering into the land of somebody else, if he is staying on the land despite of this fact that he was asked to leave that place, then this defense of damages and all will not be applicable. So, this is the second essential of trespass. So, this was like that plaintiff has to prove these two things, that he was having possession of the property, then the possession was disturbed by the defendant. Now, it comes to the defendant, that when defendant was made liable for trespass, he is having certain defenses that he can claim for his defense, like he was authorized by the party. Who is party here? It's plaintiff. That he was called by the plaintiff on that land and he was authorized by the plaintiff to come on the land. He entered with the consent of the plaintiff, then it is a valid defense and he cannot be made liable for trespass. Then authorized by law. If law is authorizing someone to enter into the land of somebody else, then it would not be considered as trespass. For example, a police officer is entering into somebody's land in his absence or without his permission with a search warrant to search that place. Whether that police officer be made liable for trespass, then answer would be no, because here the police officer is authorized by law to enter into the land of that person. Then this entrance can be made for taking his property back. If defendant is entering into the property of plaintiff for taking his property back, then again defendant has to prove three things. First of all, that plaintiff takes his property without his permission. If it is with his permission and then defendant is entering into the land of plaintiff to take his property back, that would be considered as trespass. But if plaintiff himself is at wrong foot, then he cannot claim that the person entered without his permission. There that person is having rightful authority to enter into the land to take his property back. Second one, that the property is stolen by third party and parked on plaintiff's land. It was taken by third person and then it was put into the land of plaintiff, and for taking that property defendant entered into that land. And third one is that property carried away by act of God. There was a huge wind, there was like typhoon, and the property carried away to the land of the plaintiff, and for taking it back defendant entered into that land. So, these are certain conditions which he has to satisfy first for taking this defense, that he entered into the land of plaintiff for taking his property back. Then fourth one is necessity, that demand of circumstances to prevent or avoid greater harm. For example, there is a fire in the neighbor's house which may cause damage to the nearby people, or there are some people inside that house and suddenly fire broke out, and to save those people and to save surroundings, that person entered into plaintiff's land. That won't amount to trespass, because it was the necessity, it was that demand of time that he had to enter into land without taking the permission of the plaintiff. And self-defense, that he entered into another land either to save himself or his belongings. So, this is a complete defense in the case of trespass. Now, come to the remedies that are available to the plaintiff. Okay, plaintiff has proved that there were the two things, essentials were there, that he was having rightful possession and then that possession was disturbed by the defendant, and some defenses are there with the defendant, but defendant was not able to prove those defenses. Then there are certain remedies that are available to the plaintiff, and these are classified as judicial remedies and extrajudicial remedies. So, as far as judicial remedies are concerned, they may claim for damages. This is the foremost remedy, that if there is some sort of damage that is caused by defendant, then plaintiff can ask for the monetary relief. And but for that he has to prove actual damage. If no such damage is there, he cannot ask for some monetary damages, and if no actual damage is there, then court may award some nominal amount, and that may be very small amount can be given for that damage caused. Then plaintiff can file a recovery suit, that may be in the case of specific immovable property, that may be in the manner that is provided under CPC, Civil Procedure Code. Then he may file for injunctions. Injunctions means stop orders, that he may ask the court to pass injunction order, and that order may be in against the defendant to stop using that property. to stop creating that trespass against the property of plaintiff. Then the next judicial remedy is action for mense profit. Mense profit is some sort of profit that is enjoyed by defendant while being on the possession of that property which is actually not his own. So, apart from this damages or recovery or injunctions, plaintiff also entitled to claim this benefit that were enjoyed by the defendant while property was under his control. Actually, that profit should go to the plaintiff. So, he may ask for these profits which were malafidely enjoyed by the defendant during that time period. So, these are certain judicial remedies. Then come to extrajudicial, which he may exercise himself without taking measures from the courts. First of all, re-entry, that he may use certain force, reasonable force, and he may re-enter into his own land. So, where he is wrongfully dispossessed of their land, law provide him this right of re-entry, but this force should be reasonable one. That force cannot be used in excess. And then expulsion of trespasser, by making re-entry, he may use certain force to expel that trespasser from his land. But again, that force should be reasonable and that should not be excess one. And the next one is distress damage pheasant, which means rightful person is entitled to seize cattle of wrongdoer until compensation is paid. So, if defendant is not getting out of that property, plaintiff is having this remedy that he may seize certain things, certain cattle of the defendant unless and until he get himself removed from that land. So, these are certain extrajudicial remedies that are available to the plaintiff. Now, next one is, this is all about trespass to land. Now, next is trespass to person. It is same as that of trespass to land. There we discussed that one person is interfering in the right of enjoyment of land. Here it is the intentional harm or interference with individual person integrity and physical well-being. So, how disturbance can be caused to the bodily thing of a person? So, here it does not mean that there should be some kind of entrance into the body of the person. It is like interference with the personal integrity and physical well-being. So, it is unreasonable interference with malified intention with an individual body which is committed either by causing physical harm or by apprehension of use of force. So, these are two things that are necessary over here, that is physical harm and apprehension of use of force. That somebody is causing that apprehension that force can be used against him or actual force is used against him. This is called trespass to person. So, there are three categories, we have classified into three categories: battery, assault and false imprisonment. First, we will take assault, that is also a crime and it is also a civil wrong. That it is an act of defendant that causes reasonable apprehension of harm of battery in the mind of plaintiff. Assault that can lead to battery. So, this apprehension should be there in the mind of plaintiff and that should be caused by the defendant. So, again it is the act of defendant which causes to the plaintiff reasonable apprehension of the infliction of battery the defendant can caused on him, that may be by the defendant or through the defendant. So, only the act of the defendant does not constitute assault, the defendant should also have a prima facie ability to do the harm. So, apprehension in itself is not sufficient, only the act of the defendant is not sufficient, it must be having that capability to create that apprehension in the mind of plaintiff that yes, this force can be used against him. For example, Mr. A with empty hand said to Mr. B that I will shoot you. For shooting somebody, there must be a gun. And with the empty hand, he is just threatening B that I will shoot you. there is no such kind of apprehension that can be caused in the mind of B that yes, he will be shot down. So, in this case there will not be any kind of assault. So, if defendant is having no ability to cause the apprehension that harm, he will not be considered as a assault. So, for committing an assault, there are certain essentials. First one is intention. If in a joke one friend is threatening somebody else, his other friend, that cannot be considered as an assault because it's a friendly talk. But if there is an intention on the part of defendant that he is or he may commit that crime, commit that thing against the plaintiff, then he would be certainly liable for the tort. So, that intention must be there. He must have that intention to cause harm. Then no intention, no suit, because there is no assault. Then second one is capacity to use the force, as we have discussed in the last illustration, that capacity should be there. If there is no capacity to use that force, for example, if that person is not having hands and he is saying that I will beat you, there is no capacity on the part of defendant and he cannot be made liable for the assault. So, along with the intention, capacity should be there. Then knowledge about act of defendant. This is again a certain essential that there must be knowledge of the act which is done by the defendant. If plaintiff is not having that knowledge, the apprehension cannot be created in the mind of that person. For example, thief with empty hand asked Mr. A to giving Mr. A's all belonging to him, otherwise he will stop him. So, there is neither capacity nor apprehension because he is not having anything. He may be Mr. A can also beat him, Mr. A is also having that capacity to stop him. So, in this case there is neither capacity nor apprehension, so there is no assault. Then comes battery. Battery is actual use of assault. When that apprehension comes into the reality, that is considered as battery. The essentials of battery is, first is use of force, that force is used by the defendant against the plaintiff. Intention is there, that is the essential of assault also, and it is without lawful justification. If lawful justification is there to use that force, then it cannot be considered as battery, as it was there in the case of Lee versus Gladstone, that Mr. A forcibly feeding a person who was on hunger strike. To feed a person who is on hunger strike, that cannot be considered as a battery using a force against that person. So, here battery is not there. Then third one is false imprisonment, to confine a person with malified intention, that is considered as false imprisonment, which is also considered, it is called as wrongful confinement in criminal law. Again, the essentials are that there is total restraint of liberty, it must be without lawful justification. If these are there, then we can say that the person has been wrongfully confined. If we say defenses in the tort related to person is, first one is self-defense, that if somebody is using force against me, I can surely use self-defense against that person. Then consent of plaintiff. If I am giving consent to the plaintiff, if the plaintiff is giving consent to the defendant to use that force against him, then again he cannot make defendant liable. Contributory negligence, if both parties are negligent, again it debarred that plaintiff to recover the damages. And prevention of trespass, I can use a reasonable force to prevent that trespass. Parental authority, being a parent, they are entitled to inflict certain harm or use certain force against their wards for their discipline, education, health care. Public authorities can use. Judicial authority, yes, judicial persons, police officers, they can use reasonable force to allow or permit, that is permitted by the court of justice, to detain a person. Then these are certain remedies like action for damages, that we have already discussed in the case of trespass to land, self-help. Habeas corpus, that is writ which is issued by the under the Constitution of India for wrongful detention of a person for his release. So, this is all from my side for this session in relation to trespass to land and person. Thank you.